deliver this, lecture or the interactive session on the inner transformation. And it is indeed a great honor to have Professor T.V. Rao on our program. I think it's several years. I don't know when was the last time, sir, we had a person of your stature on our program. It's a great evening for the chapter, having both Mr. Kaipa and Professor Rao. And we also have several distinguished members from all over the country in this program, and some of them are the National Council members of the ISTD. That shows the quality and the importance of this program that everyone is attaching to this evening. The topic is really timely. The whole world is looking for transformation, but the external transformation is only possible through inner transformation. And I'm sure, as Mr. Dabas said, all the distinguished participants are looking for a quick fix solution from Professor Prasad Kaipa on how to, I think, how to change the inner world so that we can look for some change in the external world. We are having a very, very, short time to have this interactive session with Professor Kaipa. Therefore, without much ado, I'll hand over the floor to Dr. Anand Reddy to introduce Professor Prasad Kaipa.
Thank you, sir, for delivering the welcome note. I'm sure that I need not to introduce too much about Dr. Prasad Kaipa because everybody knows about him, and I'm sure most of you might have already gone through the profile. However, I would like to speak a few things about sir. Prasad has been an author, leadership coach, advisor, and researcher. And he strives to bring Indian Vedantic wisdom to management theory in practice. This is what I liked, and also I heard him almost 7 to 8 years ago, where he spoke about how Indian wisdom, Vedantic wisdom, can be implemented in the management theory and practice. Now, he also has cognitive and neurological sciences along with the brain research also hold Prasad's deep interest. And he is, by profession, Prasad holds a PhD in physics from the University of Utah, where his team built an international research laboratory. And he was an early employee at Apple as a technology advisor, manager in Apple International Product Marketing, and research fellow in Apple University. So he's also author of a couple of books, I'm sure that we have already shared. And in the process of discussion, we'll come to know more about sir and his contribution to the management as well as the learners forum. Sir, we welcome you, and we are privileged to have you with us. And as we said, through this session, we are going to get enriched. And as Dr. Bhaskar Rao Garu said, most of us are looking for an immediate solution from you. So I'm sure at least, if not all, most of us will be definitely getting that solutions to a lot of questions that we have in our minds. So with these few words, I hand over the session to you, sir. And thank you very much once again for accepting our invitation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhaskar Rao Garu and Anand Reddy Garu. Can you make me a host or give me ability to share slides?
Sure.
And first and foremost, as we are getting the slides, I do not have any immediate solution.
Yeah, you are done. Sir.
I don't have any short-term stuff. Actually, I learned more after I went into Vanaprastha, if you want to call, in 2 years ago, rather than 30 plus years of working. So, sorry to disappoint you, but there are no quick solutions to inner transformation. So, let's see. People are coming in. Okay, I can share. And all right. All right. So that's the reason why I said the inner transformation, it's a game changer. It's a game changer if we actually are interested in looking at what game we are playing. There was a wonderful book in 1991 when I was consulting with Boeing. A friend of mine, Arthur Lerner, had introduced called Finite Games and Infinite Games by James Cars. What that really talked about in that book was there are two games. One is the game that we choose to play. Obviously, in India, it's the cricket. That's the number one game that everybody picks. In addition to that, we have different kinds of games, which are whether it is basketball or table tennis or badminton, especially in Hyderabad with, various Pulala Gopi Chand Academy and so many wonderful people coming from Hyderabad Academy. Badminton is a very famous one. All of these games, if you take, in cricket, you have 11 players on each side who come onto the grounds, and you have a certain number of hours to play. Whether it's a 2020 or a one day or a test match, you have a certain amount of time, and you know very clearly who is on your side, who is on the other side. You also agree on the rules, and you also know what the tools are, and then you have umpires who are actually trying to do the game according to the set of agreements that you have come to. That's a finite game. It ends, there is a winner, there is a loser, and everything is fine. But inner transformation is like the infinite game where you are born and the game has been going on for a long time. So when you are born into the game, you don't know what you are supposed to do. You don't know how many sides are there. You don't know who actually is on your side and who is on the other side. What are you supposed to do? What are the rules of the game? And how do you really, when you are playing the game, what does winning the game mean? Because the game has been going on before you started, and the game will continue long after you are gone. What looks like a finite game where you won today, you might lose tomorrow. From that book, I began to realize he's talking about life versus the career that we play. Especially when we are in the learning and development or human resources field that we operate in, it becomes extraordinarily hard to be able to say, what is the game, especially after the COVID and after the situation that we have gone through in the past 1 year, what is the nature of the game that we are playing? And are we playing the same HR, same learning and development we used to do before some of the major changes? Like one major change that came about was the information technology transformation. Then India took the lead in now pharmaceutical industry. Even before the COVID, we were well known, but now AstraZeneca or many of the vaccines are actually being manufactured legitimately, and not just a what you might call a no brand name generic medicines. Actually, the brand name medicines are being made in India and then shipped everywhere else. So we have changed the game. There are some things that have happened, and India is going through inner transformation. Our profession is going through inner transformation. For me, the big realization came a couple of years ago when I thought I had done enough. I was actually doing a transformational leadership program on February 19th, 2019 in Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. And we had a guest speaker from Arvind Eye Hospital. Several of you might be familiar with Dr. Venkataswamy and Arvind Eye Hospital. And some of the people have become very close to me. I spent Several times I went to Arvind Eye Hospital and I have interacted with several of the people. And then I was affected by the founder of Arvind Eye Hospital. When we spoke when he spoke through the video, he has passed away, for some of you who don't know, and the founder is not here for more than 10-15 years. But when I listened to him, he talking about the implicit faith that the patient has in the doctor, and they are willing to surrender themselves, their eyes, or if you go to a cardiologist, their heart, or something else, doing certain deeper work where they may live or die, or they may lose their eyes or something else. He says the doctor has to really look inside whether he is doing something for money or whether he is genuinely connected to a noble purpose of helping other people. I was doing this transformational leadership program in 1989. I had, in ISB alone, we have been doing 3 times a year, and pretty much we had to cap the program around 30, 35 because it will be much harder to do a 4-day, 5-day program with much larger than the 30, 35 people participants. And I pretty much was conducting the program like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. to a certain extent. Sometimes it was a pretty intense program, and I had been doing it from 2003 in ISB. In addition to that, I had an opportunity in the 30 years of being in learning and development. Over 60,000 people had gone through the program. So I had a large data sample size to really look at people who worked with. But at that moment, I wasn't sure anymore whether I am actually transforming some people out of my head, or actually am I transformed? I started asking, when did I last transform myself? And how much of what I am saying is just something I'm speaking from my head? Of course, I had a lot of passion and I had a lot of intensity. I am deeply committed to this work. But if I ask my people, like my family, my wife, my children, or my close friends, will they tell me that I have changed, that I have transformed? How much transformation have I brought in my own life, working with large number of people? That became a question which I could not immediately answer. So the perspective I realized was, first I was a physicist. I actually got my PhD from IIT Madras, went to University of Utah for a postdoctoral fellowship where I had a lot of opportunity, where the papers I published with and the people whom I worked with, one of them got a Nobel Prize. And then I had an opportunity to work with several other Nobel laureates since then. Then I was in Apple. I had the opportunity to interact with and work very closely with people like Steve Jobs and Wozniak and variety of people. And then I had the chance to really look at how to design and develop world-class products. And that's where, when I was made a fellow in the Apple University, I had an opportunity to go back and talk to 200 extraordinary people, including 17 Nobel laureates, on nature of learning. How do people learn? How do people think? How do people collaborate? How do people create? And how do people lead? These are the 5 areas where I went very deeply. For a year, I went around. And actually, on that quest, I had come to India to attend the first open space conference conducted by V.S. Mahesh in Taj Group and Harrison Owen, who is the founder of Open Space Technology. And that's where I had the good fortune to meet Dr. T.V. Rao, in addition to people like Anil Sachdev, and there were several other people, Ann Stadler, Sudhanshu, some really great friends who have become lifelong partners for me in learning. That's why I'm so happy, and it's a privilege to see Dr. Rao here. And what it did was that conference in 1989, September end to October, at the end of attending that conference, I went back and first thing I did was I resigned from my company, resigned from Apple, because I realized that trip to India, that trip with this wonderful group of people, there were several other people. Roger Harrison was there, Rani Lessam was there, Ann Stadler was there. There were so many wonderful people from around the world. When we met together and spent 5 days, I realized all my research in the brain research, being so proud that I was in the operating theaters of people I met all over, the extraordinary people, that arrogance was gone. I realized, like Sir Isaac Newton said, I am like a small kid playing on the beach next to a large ocean, picking up the seashells, with never jumping into the ocean and discovering the deep depths of any of them. That led me to quit Apple, because I began to really think about something deeper. And by the way, one more transformation that allowed me to dig deeper was just as I was completing the Goa program, I was going back to United States. One of my uncles gave me Vakayogi Atmakatha, in English, Autobiography of a Yogi of Paramahamsa Yogananda. And I spent a lot of time on the plane really looking at what that book really meant. And then I went to Yosemite National Park and did meditation for about 3 days, because that book put me into a really powerful place, especially after the Goa conference. So the result was I left Apple. I decided I will continue to research on nature of learning, but I will do it from the perspective of unlearning. Because right at that time, one of the last persons who really influenced me and who got me onto from thinking to being mode was one Dr. Mohan Rao, who used to teach in Indian Institute of Science at that time. He was actually a robotics professor, but what he talked to me about, the Autobiography of a Yogi, Inner Sciences, Indian, attention, whatever research that we have done for time eternal in Vedanta and yoga. And he reconnected me back to all the Sanskrit I learned, all the other things that I learned there. So from 1989 till 2019, I was in the learning and development profession. And as I said, I took Vanaprastha in 2019. I had been researching, where am I introspective? Obviously, like Dr. Bhaskar Garu as well as Anand Reddy said, before that, I was focusing on igniting the genius within people. I was integrating the Vedanta, talking about the heart and soul. I was integrating cognitive sciences and neurological sciences with the management technology, whether it is the positive psychology or whether it was appreciative inquiry, whether it was traditional management theories that have been there from Peter Senge and everybody else. But that's when I realized in 2019, I was smart, but I was not actually wise. Even though I wrote a book on smart and from smart to wise, I realized I was anything but wise. I was unwise and otherwise, but not really deeply integrating what I'm teaching. Like in America, as they call it, I was not eating my own dog food. Many of us in training industry or learning and development industry, we teach from our head, but we don't actually integrate into our own heart and soul what we are teaching other people and practice it, like the karma yoga with our hands. So for example, when I asked my wife and 2 children, they said, oh, you may be a great teacher or you may be a great coach, but definitely we won't use the word great regarding being a husband or a father or a family member, because you are mostly absent. And essentially what you did, you may think it's a sacrifice of family life for the larger good, but from our own perspective, I feel like you didn't do your duty. You didn't do your responsibility. maybe I'm the only one who gets that kind of thing, but that really got me to get into introspective mode. First, when I went into the inner transformation after I quit the job, as I started really reflection and introspection, I realized my modus operandi. First, obviously, the curiosity and skepticism is the basis of research. Like physics was all about, objectivity. Physics was all about looking at it from outside in, like a Sakshi Bhavana. The second thing that was very important is rational thought. There wasn't any, it was all about data and information. More data that I get, more research that I can do externally, that was important. Then the second thing I learned after I went into Apple Computer was actor versus action. That means kartrutva bhavam and bhoktrutva bhavam that I was bringing in. I am the one who is doing it. I am the one who is enjoying it versus actually the action taking place. When I became a learner, L&D consultant, coach, a professor and a thinker in the area of leadership development, I began to realize that doesn't work. There is a first person research. That means what am I going through? The second person research, what I learned by interviewing many of the other people, whether interviewing CEOs for the book of, from Smart to Wise, or entrepreneurs, for the book with Meera Shenoy that I wrote called You Can, blind entrepreneurs, people who have disabilities. When I looked at many of the interviews, that's a second person research. But most of the time in the profession, we read books, we read articles, we rarely do our own research. We rarely integrate our own feelings and our own intuition and our own stuff. So we are actually trying to implement something on other people that we have never experimented ourselves, that we are not willing to do. So the cognitive models and brain research was wonderful, but there was no Trikarana Suddhi. There was no Kaya, Vacha, Manasa. We all say if by any chance you happen to be a Hindu and you happen to, do Vishnu Sahasranamam, at the end of it, you say, Kayena Vacha Manasa Indriyairva Buddhyatmana va Prakrute Swabhavat Karomi Yad Yad Sakalam Parasmai Narayana iti Samarpayami. What does that mean? Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, Buddhi, with all these things, I actually do what I can. Anything and everything that I can, I will do it with my heart and the mind and the spirit, and then rest, I surrender, saying Narayana iti samarpayami. I'll just surrender it. That means whatever I preach, am I being honest? Whatever I am telling you, is that exactly the whole truth and everything? Or just because you are a CEO and I am the HR manager, if I tell you the truth, you are going to fire me. If I think that you are you just are on your ego trip and you think this can be done, our company is so and so. If I try to tell you that, actually I won't have a job. And of course, other people, including my family members, will say, how could you tell that to your boss? Don't you have any EQ? Don't you have any emotional intelligence? Don't you know when you need to tell, when you should keep quiet? What kind of a person are you to teach, to tell your boss what he should be doing or she should be doing, right? But the problem is, if your job is an advisor or a coach and you are hired for the senior managers to get them on a right path, and I worked with over 130 CEOs and C-suite executives, but I found I had to be very, very careful. Like Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, Na Bruyat, Satyam Apriyam. Tell the truth, but you have to create a context in which you can tell the truth. But the truth is not always properly followed. Am I following the truth? Other people are following the truth. How do I help them? Is something that I began to realize. I have stopped internalizing some of it. I stopped practicing what I was doing. I pretty much came to a point that I am so rational and data driven and external driven, brain research, assessments, large amount of data that I need to get 360-degree feedback, all of it because I don't trust myself. When I get a lot of data from outside, maybe my mindset or my mental models can alter a little bit. But as soon as 360-degree feedback comes from people around me, I say, oh, where did this data come from? I know exactly the person who might have given me that feedback. That person, I could never teach. This person doesn't show coachability, or this person never attends my meeting. I don't even know who that person, but I already made it up, and my bias is showing, so that, I'm sure I'm the only one who thinks like that. You guys don't have such biases. So I'm just saying my experience. What it means is my instinct, my emotion, my intuition, I rarely use. I try to go based on it, and I try to be in control. But actually, in past 2 years, I realized I'm not in control. I've never been in control. There was a, more differentiation I create, more polarization I create, more I try to look at leaders behave this way, coaches and advisors behave this way. Line managers do this, HRD managers do the process and facilitation. And when I began to look at how many decisions we make rationally and logically versus it is because we have an implicit bias against minority or against diversity or against engineers or against salespeople or whatever. And then I realized when we talk about learning, learning comes to 4 things. Learning to learn is acquiring knowledge. Learning to do is acquiring skills. Learning to integrate skills and knowledge from the school as well as my internship is becoming competent. So that means learning to do, learning to learn, and learning to grow, all of these are external stuff. But the capacity, especially the COVID-19 has pushed many people into capacity. My introspection, it pushed me into a certain amount of depression and anxiety that I had to literally take Lexapro so that I can actually get out of this introspective mode, because my capacity was shortened. Literally, it was short-circuited when I started looking at how much I am authentic, how much I am fake. I did what I could with other people, but I don't think I really tapped into my full genius. I tapped into my potential, and I really tapped into my capacity because I was afraid this is not the way business is done. Like you told me earlier, please give us a quick answer to this. I found that there are no quick answers. They are all cyclic, and we have to focus on the capacity to think, capacity to learn, and the capacity to learn depends upon our unlearning, and capacity to think depends upon recognizing how many of what we do is pattern matching. So I realized even retirement, or why I got into my depression or anxiety a little bit, was I shifted intensity and introspection from working on the client and their ecosystem, working on them, into myself. So I didn't retire from the work. I just shifted the field from paid consulting to my own deeper introspection. So that means, I didn't learn anything. I didn't retire from anything. I was actually doing with the same intensity. So then I realized working and learning are 2 sides of the same coin. So we talk about, we are the process people, we help learning and training and development, or we work on the HR processes. They do line managers, line work. There is no such thing like that. A Harvard Business Review had an article saying HR people, not just the marketing people or sales people, can be excellent CEOs of the companies. A few years ago, there was an article there. Why do they say that? Because HR people can have an outside-in perspective. HR people can have a larger view of how the business is run. But we will never become successful CEOs. We will never be considered to good candidates for this top role unless we begin to learn both the business work, line management work, and the leadership work. And not only that, we need to teach and coach every line manager, every executive to also be a HR manager, also to be a learning and development professional. So to a certain extent, I realized the outer work, whether it is sales and marketing or manufacturing or supply chain or teaching or anything that we do, our outer work blossoms when the inner transformation takes place. If every manager whom we work with, we help them to be a good learner, good thinker, and good worker, chances are their productivity and their effectiveness goes up significantly. Then the schism between L&D professionals and line managers will go away. How many of you are prepared to really look at the nature of your work and figure out saying, I'm not just doing the coaching, I'm not just a process person, I actually have a commitment to those goals. And this is a learning model I came up with in 1991, after I interviewed these 200 extraordinary people in various fields, whether it was sports or music or CEOs or Nobel laureates and all of them. But then I realized how much of it actually have I practiced. See, it begins with conditioned mind. Whether we like it or not, all of us are, conditioned mind. We don't come with tabula rasa. That means like even a young children who are born are not empty. We talk about vasanas and samskaras, and in the Western mind, like a Howard Gardner and Yale University professors, some of them have talked about multiple intelligences. We all have different kinds of intelligences with which we are born. And same thing, when we come to a job, even some of you who have come into the job for the first time, if this is the first job that you came into, you still have a conditioned mind from the books that you read. The books, whether it is Professor T.V. Rao, or whether it is Ram Narayan, or whether it is me, or whether it is Peter Senge, or whether it is anybody who has written, those are all the books that condition you. We wrote from what we learned, what we understood, but you have to discover based on these kind of markers. You need to learn and study the situation, and you have to see what is appropriate in your context, in your business, in your group, and then develop intentionality, your ichha shakti, to be able to get to a place where you want to make a difference. But once you decide you want to make a difference with a particular group, then you have to start on learning. Trust whatever you learned in your college or in your previous jobs, and also have a fear so that you are present and you bring your mindfulness to recognize that whatever you learned, whatever intervention you are thinking about, whether it's an open space or whether it's a World Cafe, or whether it is some other large scale change model or small change interventions that you are trying to do, you need to unlearn and see how much of them are applicable to the group that you are working with or the person that you are coaching, and how well do you understand the other person, and how well you understand the pressures that other person is in when you are talking to them about whatever is that you are talking about. If you do not unlearn deeper and deeper levels and understand the context, understand the other person, and understand your own deeper motivations, you will never get into a place of being open and receptive to what other people are saying, and for you to be able to do what you need to do. Openness is what people called as space. Again, for a moment, if I take you back, just because I'm much more familiar with Hindu models, even though I have spent enough amount of time, and I can bring you models from Buddhism or Judeo-Christian, which means Christian, Sufi, Judaic traditions. But I'm bringing in the Hindu models because I know the slokas by heart, and I spent a lot of time trying to think about them. There is something called Narayana Suktam. It talks about, in the heart, there is a small hole. In that hole, there is a space. In that space, there is a fire. And that fire is the one that you need to keep it alive, because that fire is the source of your life. And in that fire, the entire world that you see outside resides. Not only that, in that fire, there is spirit, there is Narayana. That is where the God actually resides. So that means in your heart, you have the entire world and you have the divinity in you. Tasya madhye vannisika. It is like there is like a fire. You need to reach out and tap into it. That's what I call by igniting the genius within. And that genius is only available when you are open, when you are receptive, when you are fully present and you are listening deeply. And that is when your creative spark, that's when your innovation, that's when your thinking, that's when your learning actually comes to fruition. At that time, you are in a timeless space. Right there, there is no time, there is no space, you're just there. And that, when it grows enough, the growth is directly proportional to the intentionality, and then you manifest. Doing and learning happens simultaneously. Have you ever thought sometimes you had an insight and then suddenly, boom, you get a solution? You don't know how the process is. The process becomes what you might call unconscious, but the result becomes conscious. Then if somebody asks you, how did you do that? I had the opportunity to do that with Boris Becker at one time, because I was in the 1989, 1990, I was going around the world interviewing people. Boris Becker was one of the people whom I interviewed. Just then he won the Australian Open. And then when he was asked to come to the prize, to give the presentation, he was just making a round of the auditorium, and he came back and he talked to, and then he said in the interview, I'm one of, today I won because I had the winning mindset, I had the strong intentionality, and I had a great Kriya Shakti. So it is not just Ichha Shakti, because top 20 people can pretty much beat anybody if they are in the right mindset on a right day. So that means I needed not only my intentionality, but also I needed to keep my perspective, especially when I'm 2 sets behind, and then come back to win the later 3 sets to become a champion. So I needed to manifest. If you ask me, how did I do that? I haven't got a bloody clue. I just did it in the moment, but later I can tell you all kinds of nonsense of what I thought about and what I did. But most of those are actually I made up. When real action is taking place, when real thinking is taking place, I'm not there. Think about it. When there is a true inner transformation taking place, you are not present. Your ego is not present. Your experience is not present. Your identity is not present. You become an observer and actor at the same time. At that time, there is no ego, there is no self. Universe itself is working through you. That's why the manifestation takes place. Then when you take a coach role, or when you take a HR role, when you take a training role, if you can coach from that place of service, and you work with the conditioned mind, your intensity and passion will go long way. So to a certain extent, I would say what I learned in the past 2 years is your inner transformation is directly proportional to your openness to change and openness to transform. Not transform other people, it is changing your own being, and your changing your being will allow you to be in the game and allows you to change your doing. But if you try to say, teach us how to do it quickly, how to do things without integrating your being, not much will happen. And that being is always having a polarity of trust in the unknown, unknown, and the fear of being recognized as the imposter. The imposter syndrome is something, if it is there, that is healthy for you to a certain extent, because you are not the one who is doing, but things are getting done through you. The spirit of who you are the being that you are, like a Prasad prasading, we are always present, continuous, because as long as we are alive, we can learn, we can think, we can collaborate, we can create. Keep that alive. That is where I think the new innovation and new ideas come in. And that is based on energy, not on the output, not on the outcomes. So that's why, again, it goes back to when even in this, some of the Lalita Sahasranamam, they say, Ichcha Shakti, Gnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Swarupini. When you talk about, focus on the feminine part of you, focus on the energy, not on time. There is even a Harvard Business Review article, if you want to check that out. Manage your energy, not time. You can Google that. So the idea is, I found out when I focus on the internal part, I focus on the ichcha, the intentionality, chit, the consciousness. These days, conscious leadership, conscious business, conscious capitalism has become really famous. I had an opportunity to work with the conscious capitalism group. I had worked with the conscious leadership group. I can tell you, majority of the time, capitalism is 90%, consciousness is 10%. If they are lucky. Most of the time, it is less than 1% for most of us. So you might want to look at, how do I become more conscious, more present, bring more of my authentic presence into what I'm doing. Then you will have a perspective. Gnana, majority of the people translate as knowledge, but I translate it as having a perspective. Vignana becomes wisdom. Vishesha gnana, vignana. Then pragna means, because intuition, the brilliance that we talk about, and that allows the Kriya Shakti. That's what allows us to do what we need to do. So what am I doing in terms of application of all of this? There is a gentleman called Harikiran Vadlamani. By the way, he happens to be in most of the time in Hyderabad and part of the time in Singapore. He was an entrepreneur and he was a finance manager. He decided to contribute and create something called Indic Academy. Indic Academy, I spelled it wrong here. Indic Academy, he's the founder. He funded something called, he has been bugging me to create a program on inner transformation, a year-long program on inner transformation, especially for people who have actually been through variety of coaching accreditations, variety of stuff. I told him, I'm not the person who can do it. You need to get somebody else who is expert and who can work with me. And if there are people, I can just be a reflection and I can be a mentor, other people can do. So Center for Consciousness Studies and Inner Transformation, Harikiran Vadlamani has initiated. So within that, Center for Inner Transformation, or a Chit Vidya, is headed by Raghu Anantanarayan. He is the president of that, and he is ably assisted by Sai Sampath, Brahmachari Sai Sampath, and Manikantan. So Manikantan lives in United States. He worked for Yahoo and HP, and he spent a lot of time in United States, went back to India, spent some time. Now he is back in United States. He will bring the Western and Indian perspectives. Saiji, being a brahmachari for a long time and also a OD practitioner for a long time, he will bring in the spiritual and other elements. Raghu Anantanarayan, some of you might be familiar with. Dow Consulting, he has written several books. He is an expert on Mahabharata, and he talks about Arise Arjuna, and he does, Ritambara Ashram and some of the things which he has done. He works a lot. PCS and everything, other places like that. He's the head. And so we are trying to create something based on, just like a positive psychology came up based on Mormon work and also Indian wisdom. I think the time has come, just like in the world, IT and yoga people talk about. I think we need to develop something completely based on Indic models. Indic means Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. In addition to Hinduism, we need to look at a 1-year program for inner transformation. We are thinking about it later this year, but right at this time, my journey doesn't have a full stop. But what I shared with you is what I have been going through. The Mathanam I'm going through, my own Mandara Mathanam. So I'm seeing part of it is to discover my own shadow, and part of it is discover my own blindness towards my family and towards so much of intensity towards work. I can never get back my children's youth, my children's innocence. But right now my children are 30, 35. But I'm going to take what I got and I will work with them and I will work with my wife. And at the same time, I looked at how to reduce my own intensity, how to enjoy and bring in a lot more fun in what I'm doing. So my story is still to be written, but that's where I am. I promise to share you what is happening. But as a game changer, I feel that allowed me to really integrate my scientific self, my spiritual self, my work self, and my home self. And for the moment, I feel like I'm having some Trikarana Suddhi. I have some integrity. And that, I believe, is a best part to start something from here. So let me stop at that, and I'll be happy to take any questions. And anything else you need to know, I'll be happy to share.
Thank you, Professor Prasad Kaipa. It's a wonderful evening. We have had more than 100 participants on a Saturday evening joining this program. Speaks about how much they love you and your, sharing your wisdom. Wonderful, sir. Thank you very much. Here is a question from one of the participants. Kindly explain about Yatho Bhava, Yatho Bhavati. Everybody is having thoughts and dedication in something which may be good or bad to some other opinion.
Okay. See, that is Yat Bhavam Tat Bhavati. It is not Yato Bhava Tato Bhavati. It is Yat Bhavam Tat Bhavati. We talk about Yat Bhavam means whatever is the deeper feeling that you have, that deeper feeling will manifest. Tat Bhavati. Whatever you are experiencing inside. See, there are bhava is a very powerful word. Most of the time, like in a music, if you go to a Carnatic music concert, they say ragam, talam, laya, but ultimately it comes down to bhavam. Like if you listen to certain, electronic experts or people who are phenomenal technically to play music, but they don't bring that ardrata, they don't bring that inner resonance, inner vibration, that melting of the heart. If it doesn't happen, you say, oh, there is no bhavam there. I can listen to this, but it feels like a cacophony rather than a symphony. So, yat bhavam tat bhavati is something that is very, very powerful. And so, if we have thoughts and dedication in something, but if you don't operate out of that thoughts and dedication for yourself, doesn't go anywhere. So inner feeling, outer action actually happens. So if you connect with your own intuition, your inner feeling, and commit to that and try to act, the result that you get will become 100% better than you think of one thing. Your intentionality is one, your bhavam is one, but your action is another. That hypocrisy will create large amount of schism. Like I was having something, it leads to depression or unhappiness or anxiety rather than producing full result.
Sir, thank you. Thank you. And there's yet another question. How do you relate your book Smart to Wise from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic situation?
I feel like when we wrote the book, it was a little too early. even though the wisdom is always something that is useful. When we wrote the book in 2013, we didn't know as much about Mr. Trump and his wisdom or lack thereof. Sorry for saying it in that way, but he was, a great example of a smart leader, a business smart leader. We will see how that business smartness will get into ethical lapses for a long time. He is a person who had a lot of ethical lapses, who had a lot of, even what you might call like a womanizer. He was a liar outright, day in and day out. He continued to lie on the TV as well as everywhere else. So that led to certain kinds of lack of wisdom. Now, post-pandemic, especially the pandemic, what it helped us to do was, when we are all put into a same room, your wife has to work, take care of kids and other things, and you're working, and kids are also studying, going to school, 3 rooms, 3 computers, or 3 iPads, or Samsung devices, or whatever is happening, you realize that suddenly there is something very, very different. People talked about work-life balance and you wanted to spend more time with family. Now you don't want to spend more time with family. You want to go to office. You want to commute a little bit, right? So the key is, pandemic made you smart, but are you willing to stop and reflect whether it made you wise? Ultimately, leadership is 3 things, right? How do you make decisions? What actions do you take? And how do you communicate those decisions? So thinking, learning, and producing results. So if you are talking about it, you might want to look at it and say, will the smartness continue to pay? Yeah, I know we have smartphones and smart homes and smart theaters and everything smart. But what it means is, if the technology has become smart, if you need to be a human being who is controlling technology, you better be wise. So my request is, in the post-pandemic, it gives you an opportunity to bring your individual wisdom one step at a time. Every day after this talk, if you can think about, can I do one action that is wise instead of smart? Can I make one decision that is wise after today? Today is Saturday evening for you. And when you go back to work, or even tonight and tomorrow with your family, can you for a minute take one communication that is wise, that doesn't put you into a guest room, or that doesn't kick you out of the house, or that doesn't get some snide remarks from your family? So if you can think about every day, one decision, one action, one communication to be wise according to your own standards, your own definition, it will be very, very powerful.
Sir, I think that thank you very much for that insightful, deliberation. I think we'll pause here, and I would be really, really honored if Professor T.V. Rao gives us a reflection of what has been deliberated so far. Professor T.V. Rao Garu, over to you, sir.
I'm surprised that you are asking me. I think it is so nice to listen to you, Prasad Garu, after quite some time. Very nice, good thoughts. I think the only one point which I just passed on to you, I said your coaching, why do you limit it? After all, this transformation is a continuous journey. So why do we have to put a space like a 1-year coaching program or 2 years? I think that's a issue that I've had. But let me tell you, I think the biggest thing that I have gathered from whatever you have said is transformation is entirely internal. It has to be guided by oneself, and continuous examination of the conscience, and constantly examining what we preach, what we act. Is there a coherence between these? As I was listening to you, I was in the first part of your talk, I was reminded of Dr. P.P. Gupta. I'm sure you remember P.P. Gupta,
Yes,
who
I
was
do.
the CMC chairman. He used to tell us, preach even if you don't practice. And I remember asking him, both Uday Parikh and I confronted him one day. We say otherwise, we say practice what you preach, and you are telling us preach even if you don't practice. And P.P. Gupta's answer was always, I remember that very powerful answer. He says, most Indians don't have anything to preach. The first thing they should learn is to articulate their thought. Thought is the beginning of action. So you cannot act unless you think. So he said, that is why I am promoting people to learn to think. A few years later, P.P. Gupta was talking, this is what he used to say in 1991, 92 in HRD Network. Later, I came up with this very interesting book from the University of Michigan professor who wrote on the leadership engine. He said that the most important thing that leaders should learn is to teach. First of all, have a point of view and preach your point of view. And that is what makes you to become a leader. Of course, I think you are adding a very important dimension. Your credibility is not there for yourself. Don't forget about the rest of the world. You have to feel credible inward. If you have to feel credible inward, then I think there should be a coherence between what you preach and what you act. I think that is the biggest lesson that you are emphasizing, that it is very important for us to continuously discover ourselves and so on. Very nice listening to you. I still remember our evening interactions in Goa at that time. And of course, later you visited us, and I still remember your, I'm sure many of you know Discovery Sampath. And Sampath was actually one who benefited a good deal from Prasad's intervention. In fact, I introduced Discovery Sampath to Prasad Kaipa in IIM campus. And I think that took Sampath across the world. I think that is a wonderful practice, Prasad, you have done. You have made many people to reflect and think about and transform themselves in their own life and so on. Thanks a lot. Very nice listening to you. Very nice listening to you.
And thank you very much. I really appreciate all of this. And I think you are right. 1 year is only a program for deeper inner reflection so that we can develop the discipline. Like in yoga, they say yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara are called bahiranga yoga. First, we need to get the discipline. Indians, we are very good in having patterns of thought. You know, I think about thinking having 5 levels. Rao Garu, as you said, first one is to say that I want to think for myself, like P.P. Gupta Garu definitely. Then once you want to think, then you have to go beyond the autopilot responses to have an original thought. But then you realize whatever original thought you have actually is a thought that is emerged as a reaction to what somebody else said. You think opposite of that or similar to that. That's the next level thinking. And from there, if you begin to think even more, then you come up with some ideas that have been tried by other people, but they are at a subconscious level. Like that, if we begin to think, then the manasa, vacha, karma. So there are 3 gaps. As you rightly pointed out, Rao Garu, first is credibility. Credibility is between what we are thinking and what we are doing. Second one is what we are feeling and what we are doing. For the HR community is very important is the commitment. Are we committed to what we are saying, or what I am saying in front of you versus what I am saying behind you? If it becomes different, then we don't have that commitment. Then our credibility will get affected seriously. The third one, what I'm saying is between your being and doing, that's when you have to have the courage. So I'm talking about first, the credibility is the external, commitment has to be internal, and the courage is the one that, at some level we discover to take the risks that we need to take and create what we need to create. So that's what defines our character. So courage plus credibility plus credibility plus commitment, I suppose, is what going to determine our L&D team's character. Hopefully that will get much beyond. But let us start with a 1-year program. Maybe we'll continue it like a certification, like a doctors keep coming back for more and more learning. We may have to continually learn. And as you said, we have to become a student of a continuous nature, continuous learning student. Hopefully that will happen, sir. But yes, your association and your friendship means a lot to me. And there are many wonderful people here. There are lots of people whom I have come across, and whether it is Sri Ram or whether it is Ramesh or whether it is Bhaskar Rao, whether there are so many people. So, Endaro Mahanabhavulu, Andariki Vandanalu. Thanks, Andy.
Sir, we have come to the end of the session, but before we close, there are so many distinguished people, and I'm sure you have inspired a lot of minds today, this evening. We will take one question from any one of the audience, one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Anyone who wants to ask a question, please ask. So to dig out of your wisdom is not easy, but then I think this is one last question to Dr. Manohar. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Kaipa, namaskar one day.
Namaskar, Andy. Very nice seeing you again. I remember meeting you.
Yeah.
My brother, through my brother.
Yes. Yeah, that's right, Vasugaru. In this post-COVID situation, as L&D or whatever we call ourselves, what should we be doing in stopping, the kind of behavior which is exhibited on the roads, people not wearing masks, people not, keeping the distance and all that. Now, how we can, if is a big question from my side, and what we should be doing in your view?
My view is, if we can make it entertaining, if we can make it like it is much more meaningful and fun, because most of the time our younger generation is the one who does not believe COVID will affect them, especially because some of them got COVID, but they didn't have serious effects. So they say, we'll keep doing it. Unfortunately, each person who has positive, who are tested positive, will affect about 140 to 400 people. And their own parents or other people might get affected. So one thing which might be fun is, if we can create like Kaun Banega Karodpati, if you were to say, who is the person who saves most people rather than who is the person who affects most people? So think about some clear, some clever twist on, wearing the masks to be funny, wearing the masks to be challenging. Who can come up with the most interesting mask on their face? So if you can say something like, design your own mask, show your own message, promote your own brand, create your own logo and demonstrate it on your mask. So come up with some competitions, because Indians love competitions. If we can come up with some competitions where, the mask will only be visible if you are 6 feet away. If you come close, it will become like, it will look messy. It is like so when you are 6 feet away, then it will show you the proper image. But if you come very close, it will show only like a rough details. Design some such masks, tell them, and figure out. So that means they will always stay 6 feet away from each other to read other people's masks and to understand what other people have on their masks. I'm just coming up with a top of the head idea.
That's
right. Like that, in India, if we can create some cartoons, if we can create some fun advertisements, some of the people in advertising, they can come up with some very interesting, cute ways to poke fun at people who don't wear masks. Our movies, some ways, some small 2-minute, 3-minute videos that can come out. And, WhatsApp is I think India is the #1 country that uses WhatsApp so much. Maybe we should send some very nice WhatsApp, like a memes from one to another that tells about positive things about mask without preaching. Because children and the millennials never hate, they don't like any kind of preaching. So without preaching, poking fun and making it competitive might allow them to, be more receptive to masks and deal with each other with a little bit more respect. not thinking about themselves narcissistically, but actually looking at the common good they will do if they are careful and try to do that.
Wonderful. Awesome. Awesome. And thank you so much. And it's a wonderful evening with Professor Prasad Kaipa. And, the icing of the cake, the great evening that has brought us is having Professor T.V. Rao along with him, and Professor T.V. Rao sharing his thoughts on what the inner transformation means and the kind of perspectives that he has added to the ideas and the perspectives that Prasad has brought us this evening. And there are so many distinguished people, the National Council members, the Managing Council Committee members of the ISTD Hyderabad, senior professors, a lot of them are there. Thank you so much for being here. And before I hand over the floor to our secretary to do the formal vote of thanks, first let me thank Dr. Anand Reddy for getting you onto this program. It's a wonderful thing that Dr. Anand has done. Thank you so much, Anand. And 1 minute, I would like Dr. K.R. Gangadharan to speak. Dr. Gangadhar is also a National Council member, past president of ISTD, and is a very, very active member. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Prasad, how are you?
Hello, sir. Nice to see you again. How are you?
Nice to see you. Nice to see you too. It's many, many years since at least we used to meet in the airports. We don't meet in the airports also.
I know.
And yes, we were thinking about you. Pavitra and me were talking about you just now, and I said you were talking a long time. So she's doing back with me in Hyderabad. So nice listening to you. In fact, I was going to present you to the International IFTDO conference is going to be held in India. So that's going to be sometime end of the year. Hopefully, it will be held in persons. So I was going to suggest your name to them to invite you. Hope the committee considers that. And nice listening to what you had to say. Wonderful listening to you. After a long time, I was
There are
listening
lots
to you.
of younger people who are ready to speak, sir. I'm an old.
Yes. Yeah. One thing that I really liked.
We should
Yeah,
invite some newer, younger people. I don't have much to say.
Yeah, I know. I think that's one point that you mentioned was the current youngsters are not willing to accept whatever you say. They're looking at something different because I think one of the exchanges that was going on in the chat was, you can talk, can you practice? That's one of the things. And I remember Dr. T.V. Rao was commenting on that chat. It is very interesting. While you are talking, there was also chatting going on here and this. But nice that you promoted that kind of a talking going on. And I look forward to seeing you once again. Nice seeing you once again, Dr. Prasad. Do well. Take care. I hope family is doing well.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Both to Dr. Srinivas. I think we have already crossed about 10 minutes. So we'll wrap it up in the next couple of minutes. Dr. Srinivas to propose vote of thanks.
Very good evening to all the dignitaries over here. I especially thank on behalf of ISTD Hyderabad chapter myself, Dr. Srinivas Rao, Secretary, ISTD Hyderabad chapter. Apologies for joining late, but I was all the way through listening your session. I was going, I got connected through my mobile, but I was going through all the things that you were presenting during the session, sir. We profusely thank on behalf of ISTD Hyderabad for taking your time out and enriching the knowledge of the professionals here. And I thank all the professionals who have joined, namely Professor T.B. Rao, Dr. Manohar, Professor Gangadharan, and several National Council members. Sorry if I missed out your name, but thank you very much for the time out. Thank you one and all.
Thank you. Great session.
Thank you one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Sir.
Wonderful to reconnect with lots of old friends. I appreciate it. And connecting with new friends, and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all, and have a great weekend, and we will sign off.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anand Reddy,
Srinivas, thank you.
for bringing in such a great speaker onto ISTD Hyderabad chapter.
Thank you. My pleasure.